We're going to see President Obama tonight. He's going to deliver his farewell address following a tradition set by his predecessors. Some goodbyes are more famous than others. President Dwight D. Eisenhower's speech introduced a phrase that still resonates today.
In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
President Eisenhower delivered this warning January 17, 1961. About 65 hours later, John F. Kennedy was sworn in as the 35th President of the United States. That time span is the subject of the latest book by Fox News Channel anchor Bret Baier. It is called 3 Days in January, Dwight Eisenhower's Final Mission. Bret, good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
So much interesting stuff in this book, including your inspiration for this book. I want to get to that in a minute. But first, what do we think Obama's going to say tonight in this final address?
You know, I bet that he chose Chicago to focus back on his original message about hope and change and kind of evolve that to look forward to the hope of the future of the country. I bet you'll hear what he sees as his accomplishments in his time in office, and probably also a few warnings for his successor along the way. But if I had to bet, optimism is probably going to lead the day.
I think, based on what Bennett Bernard said to me yesterday, I mean, he's going to touch again the narrative that he so well articulated in the 2008 campaign, his personal narrative as part of the American narrative.
Right. And, you know, Eisenhower did a lot of that, of forecasting a blueprint for the country going forward. But his main point was really a warning about certain things, a warning not to let go of bipartisanship, really try to work across the aisle. The warning, of course, the famous line about the military-industrial complex, he wanted to call it the military-industrial congressional complex because of the tentacles that business would have into American politics and that cycle of people working in government and then going to lead a corporation or a board.
You know what struck me about your book, Bret, is that there are so many similarities that I see happening today. When you look at between Eisenhower and Kennedy, and you look at Barack Obama and Donald Trump, the message that they want to send, that they both believe in a peaceful handoff of power, and that they both revered the office.
So this book starts with President-elect Kennedy meeting President Eisenhower at the White House. It ends with President-elect Trump meeting President Obama at the White House in this bookends. And Eisenhower was really concerned about the smooth transition. He wanted to make sure Kennedy understood that when you hit the Oval Office, something different happens. It is a different feeling, a different onus that is on your shoulders.
And Kennedy didn't take his advice always.
He didn't. He believed that a few advisors here or there could do it. The Bay of Pigs happens, and the first person that Kennedy calls is former President Eisenhower, and that's this iconic image on the front. They're walking on the path, and Kennedy says to Eisenhower, you know, no one knows how tough this is. And Eisenhower says to Kennedy, Mr. President, with all due respect, I told you that 3 months ago.
Right. I mean, you write that Eisenhower worried about Kennedy's campaign rhetoric and said, quote, he knew the challenges of the job, know the weight of the decisions, and the mere fact that the job and that weight never leave you as president. And that has been said about President Trump. You don't really realize it until you sit there in the Oval Office.
Right. Eisenhower said the easy problems are solved down the line. The impossible problems end up on the Oval Office desk, and those are the ones that you have to deal with.
I think that President Obama has some concerns in terms of democracy, having to do with both hacking and also having to do with fake news and things like that. There's some concern about how an informed citizenry is important, that they understand what the country does, and they understand policies that are in place.
I agree with you, and I think that there are a lot of elements that obviously didn't factor in back then. I think somebody the other day asked me what would Eisenhower say about Twitter, and I said first he'd say, what's Twitter? And then he'd say, don't do it, because he believed less is more. And obviously, President-elect Trump has a different communication strategy than did.
And you say Donald Trump is the 5th president to hold this office without having prior political experience, just like Eisenhower. What do you think he could learn from that?
Well, I think there is, he's a president-elect who's obviously doing things that are getting a lot of attention. As president-elect, then Eisenhower went to South Korea, and that really upset then-President Truman during those times. he has a lot of power because he's known around the world, Donald Trump. Eisenhower would urge caution and balance and measure and having dissenting voices, and also that bipartisan push. Eisenhower worked with Sam Rayburn and Lyndon Baines Johnson to get a big highway project through, the interstate highway system. Donald Trump could do the same with infrastructure.
Brett, it's a very good read, but can I ask you this? Have you heard that Megyn Kelly is leaving Fox?
I hear that. Listen,
I'm just wondering your thoughts on that.
You know what? I'm really happy for Gail. I've texted with her, talked to her.
I'm happy for her, too.
I know it was a tough decision for her, and she did it primarily for her family, I think, and I'm really happy for her.
So you're wishing her well.
Definitely, of course.
And to all the golfers out there, you have to read this book because there's a lot about Augusta National Golf Club, of course, here, and Ike's Cabin is the inspiration for this book, which was a lot of fun to read. So congratulations.
And Bobby Jones were great friends.
They were.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Congrats to you, Mr. Baier. Thank you for coming to the table.
And happy 5th anniversary.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
Yeah, we look good for 5, right?
Real good.
3 Days in January is on sale right now, wherever you like to buy your books.